Hey everyone, so in this video I'm going to talk about how to run a successful piano recital for students, and specifically online piano recital. So some of these thoughts will be logistical, some of them strategic. There's a lot of different ways to do this. This is just the way that I go about it. So, first of all, I put students through 6 weeks of performance training. Normally people are playing their pieces for me, for their peers and lessons anyway. At this point, I have my strategic teams program where there's could be 5 or 6 students within each team. Sometimes there might be less, but in any case, they are performing for each other on a regular basis already, performing for me, performing for others. If you're doing private lessons, of course, you could just have people play for each other at the end of the lesson. You could have the next person arrive early and the previous person leave a little bit later. So I did this when I was doing all private lessons as well too. And in terms of what goes into planning the recital, preparing students and so on, of course, I hope it's helpful for teachers, but maybe even for students to see what kind of goes on like in sort of this end of the process. So, so people are advancing in their pieces week by week, and maybe they've only played for me. I encourage them to play for others. Perhaps they play in a studio class, like some other kind of event before the actual recital. And at some point I'll ask them if they'd like to perform in the recital, if they feel comfortable, if they feel okay at this point in their progression. Most people will say yes, or they say they'll give it a try. I'm okay also with incomplete pieces. Maybe some teachers, they only want to do complete ones. I'm all right with just doing like the first half or even the first page of whatever given piece it might be, because I find it still greatly helps student progress to just play whatever it is that you have. And then we go into these 6 weeks of performance training, which is really just pretty much a mandatory requirement to perform for 6 consecutive weeks leading up to the recital. And I find that this is somewhat uncommon. I know that there are teachers, they just have like a run through like the week before, or they maybe even choose the piece like 3 or 4 weeks before the actual recital. But we've been working on it for some time already, typically. And 6 weeks before the recital you'll perform, 5 weeks before you'll perform, 4 weeks before you'll perform, and then typically 4 weeks before the recital I also will have a studio class, which is like another performance opportunity, peer critique from me, etc. And really the purpose is just to allow, to allow for failure many times. Failure in the sense of messing up, forgetting what it is that you're doing, not playing well. And it's a win-win situation, because if you do well, you start to gain confidence. Obviously, you're gaining experience all the while. But if you do poorly, then you know exactly what it is that you have to work on, and you start to become highly adaptable to different situations. Really, the more things that go wrong, the better, for the most part, because then you've gathered a lot of data. You're able to negotiate, navigate through a lot of different types of difficulties that might emerge. And I'm really teaching people how to fake through these various little issues that might come up. I talked about this in some of my performance oriented videos. I think they were the last 2 videos. So we're going through this training, and obviously after performance, we are still going back to like careful nitty-gritty practice using my methodologies. But performance, as I've said before, is really the global picture, right? The 30,000 foot view in terms of the piece as a whole. So it should always orient us and let us know like what it is that we have to work on. And if we can fake well, then the audience will be able to enjoy it that much more. We're not interrupting our own speaking, our own thinking as we're playing. So we're gaining this experience, the students getting more and more consistent. And usually if a number of things have gone wrong before the recital, it is very likely that either the piece will just go well in the recital, or if something goes wrong, the student will have the flexibility to be able to play through that given part. And it's really not so much about it has to be a part that they've exactly fixed. if they've gone through my training correctly, which means we've done the performance for others, for me, different performance challenges, different types of conditions, they should now be adaptable. Like totally new things could come up and they'll still be able to handle it very well. So anyway, so then basically about like 2 weeks before the recital or so, personally, I will start to think about the program order at that point. I'm sure others could do it earlier. I have a rough idea of the number of minutes of each student. I just kind of write it out in a big old list. And let me just make sure that I have battery here. I think that I do. Okay, so I write out like a list of all the pieces, and then I just start kind of putting them into what I think is a good programmatic order. The first person that performs, they could be the most beginner, but they could also just be, there's different rationales. It could be the most beginner. It could be like a strong performer or a more experienced person to start the concert off successfully for sure. It could be something that's seasonal, that kind of sets the mood for like the holiday season or for whatever it may be. And typically like the most advanced students will be at the very end of the program, so as not to make the other people nervous. But there could be some exceptions. And then usually I'm trying to put like slower pieces and quicker pieces, like maybe alternating, or maybe like, for instance, I'm teaching a very small number of children, so maybe like a child that is like here and then an older person's here, younger adult is there, different types of pieces, different genres. I'm just trying to imagine like the flow of the concert overall. What would be enjoyable for me as an audience member? If I just sat through that relatively more obscure piece, not that it's a bad piece, but I didn't know it, maybe I want to hear something familiar now. If I've heard a number of slow pieces, maybe I want to hear something that's quicker now. So I'm planning out all this order, and I just kind of write it in like a little, like it's just like in the Notes default app in terms of iOS. So I write it out, and then I'm usually just moving the people around, adjusting the order. Do we need an intermission? Rough timing. At this point now, I have a wonderful assistant, but before I would just start to input things into the recital program myself, and I would just use kind of like the same old template each time. Now I have the luxury of having somebody that's able to create new templates for me and create new programs, which is awesome. So yeah, anyway, so then we create the program typically, and usually the week before I'll send out an email, and I'll show you some of this. Let's see here. So yeah, you can see that I'm talking about we have advantages from performing from home. Make sure there's no score sheet music there. Have your environment fairly presentable. Be aware of distractions. Then I kind of describe like exactly what it is that's going to happen, the dress code, number of guests. So for me, like I am very detail oriented. So I do have a pretty exhaustive list of things that I want students typically to go through, and then I'll attach the recital program at the end. And I find that it really helps to preemptively prevent things like people will just tend to not forget to enable original sound for best sound quality, because you have to do that within Zoom so that the sound can sound the best that it can. Or people's devices won't run out of battery as much. They won't forget to like take their sheet music off the stand so that people remember that, so that people know that they can play from memory. They will remember hopefully to dress nicely. They maybe will set do not disturb so people don't call them, and so on and so forth. So I send that the week before. If there's anybody that's even slightly on the fence, then I have to like set like a rule for like, if we don't hear back by this date, then unfortunately then we're assuming that they're not going to perform in the recital. But typically any kind of last minute changes are very rare, like more or less, we already have the program and everything. And in terms of this was the program this particular time. Often I share this on social media anyway. So this is kind of what it looks like, has a front and back. So these are all the students there. Now I chose to perform at the end in this particular recital. I also numbered them so that when people join the Zoom meeting, like it's easier to keep them in the correct order. When you have like a lot of students, let's say it's like, Jonathan, John, like Harry, Joe, like whatever. I mean, they're going to be in all random order. But if you number them, like number 1, Jonathan, number 2, Joe, number 3, Harry, etc. I mean, Zoom will put them into a certain order. So then it becomes easier to like spotlight them, right? Spotlighting is, as you probably know, just making it so that they show up on the screen for everybody. It's easier to unmute them, mute them, etc. once they have a specific order. In the instructions, I try to get students to number themselves as well. It's usually more of a concern if there's like a very large number of people. But anyway, so I number them on the program itself, so I know which numbers people, each student, that's probably not good grammar, but I know what their numbers are. And in terms of performing in programs, I've seen on global like Facebook groups and things like that too, people ask like, oh, do you perform in your student programs? Lots of different opinions on this. Obviously, fundamentally, it's about the students. But if you calculate that it will bring a net positive to your studio, like it will hopefully inspire people to see their teacher doing the thing that they're asking other people to do, right? That's always good to, obviously, to try to be a role model, for people to think like, oh, it is a good idea to listen to this person because they're actually able to do all the things that they asked me to do. So I do like to perform at the end. I do like to perform something flashy, not just for the sake of flashiness, but, so that people like know like that, that I'm working hard too. There's things that are difficult for me as well. I'm pushing myself. Hopefully I'm at a higher level still than my advanced students, not because I need all the affirmation or whatever, but everybody feels that they're in good hands, basically. Like, oh, somebody that can play the piano like that, I'm glad that that person's my teacher, right? Because they have so much experience and ability. That's always comforting. It was always a great comfort for me to watch my great teacher perform. I always felt like I'm so thankful I'm studying for this with this person, because what a great musician, what a great pianist he is, frankly. So, not that I needed that, I was already very confident in it, but it was always a joy to watch him play. So anyway, and then in terms of this particular time, I mean, there were definitely some obstacles in terms of whether I might perform, but in the end, I just decided to do it because life is short and maybe it'll provide a net positive, and I think that it did. And people happened to perform very well this particular recital. I'd like to think, again, it was because of the 6 weeks of performance training, all the comments, teaching them the ability to fake and go onward, the right mindset in terms of obviously want to do well, but forgiving yourself if anything goes wrong, letting go immediately, having poise, like not having any reactions, et cetera, et cetera. And that really came across. Now, even with all of this, obviously we're human. I could have a massive memory slip. Anybody could, anybody could, really. In this case, we did it. And on average, students in my studio seem to perform very solidly because of the very practical training. So, so we're grateful for that. Anyway, so in terms of like the actual concert itself, I highly recommend writing out instructions to your, hold on a second. Okay, I almost stopped the entire video. That would have been, okay, so. All right, so you can see I have like, for instance, performing for like myself, applause finishes for previous person. Then I have to spotlight myself, which is the computer. Mute everybody. Do not allow them to unmute. Announce my pieces or piece. Spotlight my phone, which is set up somewhere else. Disconnect computer audio. Actually, I should also turn off my camera there. Walk over to the phone and take a bow. Join audio on phone. Walk over to computer and ask phone to unmute. Walk over to phone and unmute. Enable original sound on phone if not already enabled. You might wonder why I have to walk over twice, and it's because I'm not allowing participants to unmute. So so that means I can't unmute either unless I give myself permission. Anyway, all that to say, it's worth it to write out steps so that you don't confuse yourself. I have different instructions for student. I think this was for like some kind of like only like a 3 or 4 student recital. Instructions for pre-recorded student. Like, even the screenshot, because I got a Mac recently when I wrote this, I guess. So it's just worth it to write out the steps because, you might panic in the moment, you're distracted, you're running the whole thing. Sorry, excuse me. So, you just want to make sure that your step-by-step instructions are very clear to yourself, and you should walk through them. I mean, for my own performance, I literally walk through all of those steps. I walk through like sharing the pre-recorded video of like the one student that submitted a pre-recorded video this particular time. I think you have to optimize the video for like the sound quality as well too when you're sharing the video clip. I tested it like with my wife. I asked like, is the sound coming through all right? I check like the camera angle of my own, phone, like in terms of my own performance. I'm checking like both the gallery view and the spotlight view within Zoom to make sure everything looks good, is running smoothly. This is all important. Like anything you can rehearse, you should do so. Sure, the musical stuff, but also all the logistical stuff as well too. And obviously this goes for students. So I'm trying to take this very detailed mindset and teach it to students as well too. In terms of the actual running of the recital, so basically I will have, things are a little bit messy right now. I'll have like these sheets in front of me, like the recital program and these instructions. I have my mouse here, maybe like a drink here, like a mask sitting over there. And then I'll actually have 2 screens here back to back. And this will actually, oh wait, that's not a touch screen. This will actually be on the speaker view, in case my face wasn't large enough for you. But yeah, because this will be recorded. Like I will have pressed record here, and I'll be recording the entire recital on Spotlight view, so we're not like recording the entire audience. And then on the iPad, I would be on gallery view, right? So while I'm running the recital, I'm basically talking to like this camera here and being like, hey, next performer is this and this. Like I have the participants here. So, so maybe I've spotlighted, I guess, this. Would you like to join audio to speak? All right, why not? So I'll join audio to speak. Okay, so here's me here, obviously. And I'm like, hey, next performer is, like Jonathan. He's going to play Stairway to Heaven, right? And then let's pretend that I'm spotlighting him. Usually I wouldn't be holding a phone at the same time. Okay, so this is the student. And everybody would applaud here. And then in my particular case, I would mute everybody and then ask the student to unmute. We can't do that right now because I haven't even joined audio with these different devices. But basically, like I have a process that I walk through on my little checklist. You might have a different process, right? Then they perform. I ask everybody to unmute, and then we applaud again, and then I'll spotlight myself, and then I'll announce the next student. Look at the camera here. Now, if I want to see how the audience is doing, I'll just look over here and be like, oh, how are these students doing? Anything coming up? Like, is there anybody whose equipment like isn't working or the view seems weird, right? So I highly recommend having 2 devices here so that you can keep an eye on what's going on. Hopefully you can also record the recital though. I think Spotlight view is nice in this case. So after the recital is over, I always take a group picture, share on social media, which I think is nice. And we do have like an event after the event where basically it's kind of just like the talking after the recital's over, but I know it's difficult to have little pods of like 2 or 3 people, like as would be typical after an in-person recital. So after the group picture, which is when I put like all of the guests and like people that aren't on camera, like in the waiting room, take the group picture, and then I bring them back if they want to still be here. Then we just hang out and we just talk. And I thought maybe people wouldn't be too interested in talking. Not too many people would stick around. Surprisingly, they are interested. So we just hang out. I'm like, hey, anybody have any questions, thoughts about the recital, questions for any of the performers? Like essentially all the performers are the panel, as am I. And maybe other teachers that I've hired, they might be there as well too. And yeah, and then we just answer those questions, and as people have reactions, thoughts, usually it creates a very nice feeling. People are very happy, hopefully with their performances, with the recital. They want to share good feelings with everybody. And then I just start going in order from the first performer all the way to the last. I mean, those that are still sticking around. Oh, how did you feel about your performance? Like, what was it like for you? Anything you want to share? Anybody else have any questions for this person? And we just go down the line. And, as time goes on, maybe a few people leave here and there. But, yeah, we just had so this recital was just over the weekend. It was just 2 days ago. Still had a full teaching day yesterday, Sunday, but the recital was 2 days ago, Saturday. And, yeah, maybe I might share some clips at some point in the future. Historically, I haven't shared a lot of student clips, but, maybe that'll happen at some point. But, yeah, it was just a really nice, really warm feeling recital. Quality of playing was very high, honestly, and yeah, just very, very proud of all of the students. So, I forgot to mention. So the day before the recital, I do send like another email. Like I'll send an email the week before, and I'll also send the day before. Include the recital program again. Include all the instructions again, and of course during people's lessons during the week. And even before that, but especially the week right before the recital leading up to it, I will be asking, hey, are you attending the recital? Are you good to go? Any questions, any concerns you have, etc. So yeah, hope this was helpful. I don't know if there's any like students of the piano that might have been watching this. For teachers, this is one possible way to put together a recital. Happy to answer questions if you have any. And for students, if anybody's watched this, maybe gives you a little bit more of an idea of how I'm actually kind of running things logistically. I think as a final note, what I'll say is that when I'm coaching students through the performance practice, we are doing the logistical things as well too. In these 6 weeks of performance training, like I am actually spotlighting them, asking them to unmute, like muting everybody, asking them if they've enabled original sound. Like all the steps that are here, I'm asking them to do that already. And then I'm asking them to just go through the motions on their own too, so that they're not surprised by any kind of like new thing that they have to do. They're doing the bows, they're imagining themselves unmuting, like they're getting in the right mindset, all of those things. We're setting the stage, planting the seeds like the whole time basically. So yeah, I hope you found this helpful. Please like and subscribe if so, and let people know about the channel, maybe leave a comment. And yeah, looking forward to probably later this week. This video is a little bit later, so yeah, either a week from now or maybe even a little earlier. All right, see you guys soon.